One of the channel viewers suggested a video to me in which renowned alpinist David Gutler showed us his BRS 3000T stove with improvised hanging kit. It inspired me to build a couple of hanging kits of my own and then run another stove test. Hello everyone, I'm Jason. A good hanging kit for your stove can really help cold weather performance in your cook tent or the like, as it allows us to keep the canister off of the cold ground and trap heat in the surrounding environment to help combat the canister from cooling to the point where the fuel has difficulty vaporizing as we melt snow and turn it into boiling water. But of course, that is only part of the cold weather performance issue. We also often want to make sure that more heat is collected and applied to the pot, which is what integrated stoves try to do by coupling the burner to the pot. That's part of why Mr. Gotla had, in essence, a cook pot nested inside another pot, along with gaining added stability with that setup. As soon as we add such a robust heat exchanger, though, we've certainly added weight, and it made me wonder if these DIY versions would still be lighter than commercially available integrated stove systems that also can hang. And then, of course, there was the question of performance. So I wanted to take a look at some hanging setups, 2 commercial and 2 do-it-yourself, to test our performance and see how the weight and fuel efficiency compared. I used the BRS 3000T like Mr. Gutler, hung from a Toaks Titanium 900ml, 130mm wide pot, and then with a Toaks Titanium 1100ml, 115mm wide pot nested as the cooking vessel. I had an MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe with the same 2 nested pots. I had the Jetboil Minimo, the stove that has an already integrated stove and pot for heat exchange, hung using Jetboil's commercially available hanging kit. And I had the Ulti, which is a satellite stove that allows us to invert the canister to draw the fuel as a liquid, but then is also a radiant burner that nests in an integrated fashion with the pot. I also had a 5th setup using the ubiquitous MSR reactor, again an integrated system, but not hanging, kind of as a baseline of a stove system that has been known to perform well at turning snow into boiling water. I then ran 2 tests on 2 separate nights at an altitude of about 8,700 feet or 2,650 meters. Prior to the tests, I weighed all the individual components of the setups, getting a starting weight. The first night, the outside temperature was about 16 degrees Fahrenheit or -9 Celsius. I took each stove in turn and melted enough snow to produce 1/2 liter of boiling water. After each stove had produced its boil, I let it sit while I moved to the next stove, so the stoves would get about an hour to cool off. I then went back and produced an additional 1 liter of boiling water from melted snow. I recorded the time to boil and weighed the canisters pre and post use to determine how much fuel was used. The second test happened when it was slightly colder at 14 degrees Fahrenheit or -10 Celsius. The altitude was the same, 8,700 feet or 2,650 meters. This time though, I boiled 2 liters of water back to back in the same stove before moving on to the next stove. With the 2 tests combined, we can think of this as a night and a morning. We get in at night and make a 1/2 liter to cook our food, then a liter to put into our sleeping bag to keep us warm as we go to bed. The next morning, we make 2 new liters to put in our boots to keep them warm, and then we have the 3 total liters combined to cook, hydrate, and have some water to carry for the day. You can see that with the DIY hanging kits, the normally feather light BRS 3000T and the nearly as light Pocket Rocket Deluxe are only about 3.5 ounces or around 90 grams and about 2 ounces or 60 grams lighter than the lightest of the integrated stoves, the Minimo, respectively. This is because the DIY hanging kits weigh about 3 ounces more than the Jetboil option because we need to add material to create the heat exchange the integrated pots already have. So could this be addressed through a different hanging kit design? Sure, but we might lose stability or heat exchange if we get too minimal. Looking at the time to boil, the first 1/2 liter, the only stove without a pressure regulator, the BRS 3000T, not surprisingly performed the worst. All the other stoves were comparable, with the Pocket Rocket Deluxe performing quite well. But as we add in more snow to make even more liquid, the Pocket Rocket Deluxe's performance starts to fall off, and the Minimo jumps out as the high performer, although still comparable to our MSR Reactor baseline stove. Now, making 2 liters back to back, we are seeing the time between the reactor and the Minimo, as compared to all the other stoves, really start to be quicker. What's even more striking, though, is the fuel use. Looking at the 1/2 liter boil, while the time to boil was comparable for every stove except the BRS, the fuel use was not. As we move into the 1 liter boil, and again the 2 liter boil, the fuel use is strikingly small for the Minimo. If we look at the time to boil trends, we see the Minimo is trending very much in line with the MSR Reactor, and while the Pocket Rocket Deluxe starts on par with the Reactor and the Minimo, it diverges when the back-to-back boils happen. With fuel, the Minimo starts using less and the gap only widens over time. If we look at the cumulative time, we see that as the volume to boil increases, the disparities increase, as the differential between the fastest Minimo and reactor stand out, with the Pocket Rocket Deluxe coming in a distant third, and then the BRS and the Ulti performing comparatively poorly. The cumulative fuel normalizes, coming back to trend along with boiling time, but for the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, which loses fuel efficiency at the greater 2-liter volume. Now, though, we have some data to extrapolate fuel per liter boiled, triangulating on a forecast using several models. And what we are left with is this grid, with starting weight assuming a canister holding 227 grams of fuel on the y-axis, and with an x-axis that extrapolated liters boiled per canister. Of course, these are estimates and will be wrong, but the Minimo forecast would need to be reduced by 25% to even approach the number of boils we anticipate for the reactor. It would need to be cut in half to be near the Pocket Rocket Deluxe and Ulti levels. In other words, it isn't close. This is the third test I've done that has shown the Minimo simply dominate on fuel use. So as soon as you need many multiples of boils, then the weight cost of the Minimo is made up by carrying less fuel. You can watch our last winter stove test for another example of this, even as we include liquid fuel stoves. Yes, we could argue that the weight difference for the DIY hanging kits isn't that necessary, but not so much as to account for that much fuel. I can stay out twice as long on one canister, and a second canister weighs about 375 grams or over 13 ounces. DIY hanging kits have their own benefits though, and maybe I'll get into a couple of videos on that topic coming up. Tell us what stove you like to use in the winter down in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share if you want to support us. For more information, you can go to our website at www.shortguysbetaworks.com. You can watch that video on our previous winter stove test, or you can check out our entire cold series for all things winter and snow. We'll see you next week and keep on getting more out of that big outside.